Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for stopping by. So probably some of you have seen my Superman videos as of late. A lot of you have varying opinions, positive, negative. Some of you agree with me. A lot of you disagree with me. I wanted to do a video on this article that I stumbled upon from The Hollywood Reporter. It's called, "Does the World Still Want Superman?" Now, obviously, this is on the heels of the Superman trailer, the movie, James Gunn directing it, comes out next year. A lot of people love the trailer, the teaser trailer, that is. But a lot of people are excited for this film. I think, I would say maybe universally loved for the most part. I think there's a very loud minority of people that don't like it. But for the most part, I think people are very vocal about liking this film. And even people who enjoyed, the previous iteration of Superman, the Zack Snyder version of it, that version of Superman and those movies that I very much enjoyed, and to me, I think the pinnacle of superhero film. Even people who liked those movies, still like this new James Gunn Superman, or at least they're excited for it. They're optimistic for it. Me, on the other hand, obviously, I'm kind of trepidatious. I'm cautious. For the most part, I'm not a big fan of James Gunn's material. So, and the teaser trailer didn't really do much for me. And then I think the fallout of it has been rather interesting. A lot of people, just saying how much better it is compared to Zack Snyder's version, and, just saying this and that, oftentimes I think some of those takes are hypocritical. This article is actually kind of pro Superman James Gunn. Like it totally is. There are some moments in there where it kind of, takes some decent criticisms, I guess, or some decent cautiousness towards the film and what it's trying to do. But overall, I think it's rather positive, and it's an article that's excited for James Gunn's Superman film. So I thought it'd be interesting to read it, because I think at the end of the day, I'm a Superman fan. You know what I mean? As much as I loved Zack Snyder's version of the character, that version didn't resonate with the majority of people. It just didn't, and those films, Batman v Superman, Zack Snyder's Justice League, they just did not resonate, and I can't change that. I heavily disagree with it. I wish it were different, but it wasn't that, and so it is what it is, and we'll see what James Gunn does. But like I said, and like I've said many times before, James Gunn, at least he's edgy, so at least we have that. And, I think the biggest thing that this article does is tap into potentially the problem that James Gunn's Superman is going to have to tackle. It's a video that I've made as well in the past about, is Superman relevant today? It's not just about the iteration of the character being good or, being executed well in a way that resonates with people. It's just about the character himself. I think you can make an argument that people are just not as receptive to Superman as they used to be. I think characters like Batman and Iron Man, for example, are more popular and are more attractive than Superman. But then again, you have Marvel's Captain America, and people really love Captain America, and he's basically Superman, but just without the cool powers. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think, to a certain extent, we have to ask ourselves that question, regardless of how good this film is, or could end up being. Is Superman even going to be relevant? Are people even going to like the movie because of Superman himself, right? But I think the article makes a good case. But here we go. Let's give the article a read. So the headline of the article, "Does the World Still Want Superman?" This is a very interesting title for those of you who, know your Superman films. I think that question is very relevant. That is a question James Gunn grapples with in the first trailer for his film, which has the pressure of launching a universe and establishing what the hero means for today's world. I think that's a huge point. I think that's something that a lot of people on YouTube and content creators have talked about, which is just how much is riding on this James Gunn Superman film. I think to a certain extent, not only is this movie important for the character of Superman, but it is important for the superhero film genre as a whole, let alone the DC universe and its potential to appeal and to be successful in the film space. I think if this movie does not do well, oh boy, we're going to be in a world of hurt for all of those factors. So, I think that's a good point. And this article is written by Richard Newby. Very interesting last name. Hopefully he didn't get bullied. But anyways, here we go. Things are looking up indeed. After a week of buildup, the highly anticipated trailer for James Gunn's Superman finally arrived and all eyes are on the sky. As the first live-action installment of the DCU, a lot is riding on Superman. Not only is an entire cinematic universe dependent on the success of this film, but Gunn must also cut through the world's cynicism and deliver a take on the character whose cinematic depiction for many audiences hasn't resonated since 1978. I think that's another good point there. The world's cynicism, cut through the world's cynicism. Not only is the world, I think, more cynical today than it has ever been, not only is the world more divided, which we'll get into a little bit more on that later, but people are cynical on Superman himself, I think. And not only that, but it is incredibly troubling that, Superman Returns, for example, came out in 2004 or 5, one of those, didn't do very well. Not only it didn't do well financially, but I think people did not care about it, just reception-wise from the audience and critics. People did not care about that film. I actually thoroughly enjoy it. I think it's a perfect bridge between, Christopher Reeve Superman, Richard Donner Superman, and a Zack Snyder Superman. I think it's a weird in between. It was kind of the puberty stage of Superman, I think, in terms of when it comes to films. And then obviously, we have Man of Steel, which was incredibly divisive, and then Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice was even more divisive. So I think, the character of Superman just, for some reason, this character has endured for so long, and he is so relevant, and people still love him, but definitely not to the degree that they do Batman. I mean, Batman's films are way more successful. There's more of them as well. But yet, that one 1978 film, man, just has been able to live on for so long and has inspired so many films and the superhero genre, the action genre, the everything, the fantasy genre. So it's really interesting just how much the character has resonated just because of that film, but also, I mean, the character as a whole, right? I mean, even before that film, he was incredibly relevant with a lot of TV series and a lot of adaptations as well before that. And comics, of course. But that's interesting. So there's a lot of writing on this film. But the teaser trailer makes it clear that Superman 25 is not Superman 78. Kind of. Composer John Murphy's guitar riff on John Williams' classic theme breathes new life into Superman as a hero and symbol, suggesting that Superman, while hanging on to the core themes associated with the character, is a living and evolving concept, an electric current through the world. That's a good way of looking at it. I will give him that. And, I think this is a very interesting article for me to read because a lot of you who heavily disagree with me on my previous videos on the Superman film, that is a good point. Maybe you're like, oh my God, like what? You're gonna give a point to James Gunn and the Superman trailer? I thought you were such a shill for Zack Snyder. I mean, I am, but I'll give credit where credit is due. And that is a good point. To the trailer and to this theme, the riff, no pun intended, on the John Williams theme from composer John Murphy. I think it's all about what they're going for, right? I mean, that using that theme tells us that Gunn and his collaborators and everyone at WB is trying to revitalize and trying to it's just true, give people some nostalgia and try to almost kind of, temper people's expectations, try to cool them down, warm them, whatever metaphor you want to use, to be like, look, we want the Superman that you want. You know, we are going to give you the Superman that you want, the one that is more optimistic, the one that's brighter, the one that's more hopeful, more colorful. And using the John Williams theme, you know, I mean, there's no other better way to do that, you know, than to provide that theme in the teaser trailer and in the movie at the end of the day, you know. Like it is the way to tell audiences, look, we hear you, you know, we're going to give you the Superman that you want, you know, and it is what it is. They're just, you know, they're giving what the people want, what the majority of you want, right? Which is good. And for me, I think it's kind of a, you know, I think it's lackluster. Some people make the argument, well, you know, Superman has a theme, just like Jaws, for example. Like, it'd be weird if there was another Jaws movie without the Jaws theme, you know, because it is so tied to the shark and to the movie and to the ethos of the movie, right? And I think that's a fair point. You know, you could say that about the John Williams theme, right? You know, you could say that theme is so tied to the character of Superman that deviating from it is a bad call, you know, and it lets people know that you're deviating from the essence of Superman, and thus people are not going to enjoy your take on it. Now, I'm a big fan of Hans Zimmer, and I think his take on the character was more modern, and I think it's an evolved version of a hopeful theme. And I love that theme better than the John Williams theme. I think the John Williams theme is kind of corny and kind of cheesy. But some people don't think that, you know, they really think it is incredibly Superman. There's nothing more Superman than that. Not cheesy and corny, but although you can think that Superman is cheesy and corny, and you can love that if you want. But I think it's quite nostalgically desperate. I think it's kind of weak. I think it's kind of cowardly to just use that theme, to just try to bait people to liking your take. I think it's surface level. I think if you see a teaser trailer and you just hear a theme that, you know, that's like fucking, you know, 40, 30, 50 years old or whatever, and it's just nostalgia and you like it because of that, I think it's kind of shallow. But, you know, people think that theme is the embodiment of Superman, you know, and when you think about it like that, I think, you know, obviously you make a valid argument. And I think the writer here, what's his name again? Richard, I think when he says using a guitar riff, an electric guitar, to play the John Williams theme, it's sort of a metaphor to the living and evolving concept of Superman, right? And sort of him and what he stands for being an electric current through the world. I think that's a very sophisticated way of thinking about it. And I think it's a cool way of thinking about it and makes sense. There are several key takeaways from the trailer. First, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Despite Warner Brothers Discovery's press synopsis emphasizing hope and Gunn's desire to bring optimism back to Superman, the teaser trailer shows a keen awareness of the reality of the world. Surprisingly, the teaser does not open with an iconic shot of a smiling Superman. Instead, it opens with Superman, David Corenswet, plummeting from the sky and landing in the Arctic near his Fortress of Solitude. He's bloody, beaten, wheezing, and unable to make his way home without the help of Krypto. This is the part where I think the article gets a little bit more interesting, right? And I think this is where, you know, it kind of gets into the hypocrisy of what people are saying, of this new take on Superman and James Gunn's trailer. You know, it is true. You know, you like literally the main image that you see on the thumbnail for the trailer is a very serious Corenswet. His suit is not colorful. It's beaten down, and you just see people, recording him, saying a bunch of shit to him, probably. You see this guy in the back, throwing like a can to the back of Superman's head. Clearly the public is angry somehow, some way, right? So you see that, you see a Superman that's kind of worried, you know, he's like, this is in the teaser trailer footage. And even then, the first image we got from David Corenswet's Superman was him, you know, with his suit kind of battered, and he's kind of, you know, almost hesitantly putting on his boots, but like at the same time, like, you know, like you could tell he's Superman, right? So he's going to want to do the right thing, but you can tell that it's hard. He's going through a tough time. Like the article says, the beginning of the trailer begins with Superman just beaten down, and so many people I heard, and read, oh my God, like, this is so great. Like, it's finally, this movie's finally tackling the idea that Superman is not this invincible superhero. He's not this god. We're finally going to get a Superman that is beaten down, that has flaws and vulnerabilities in his physical powers, and it'll give the character more depth and all this and that. And then we, oh God, and then we see a Superman here. He's just getting, there's this mob against him, and this guy throwing a can at him, like, oh, like we're getting some depth here, like, and it's like, we already did that. We already did that with Zack Snyder's Superman. And I'm going to actually continue here because the article does eventually mention it. There is something uncomfortable, but not at all unwelcome in hearing Superman struggle to breathe. And it's true. It's true. No matter how many times you want to do it, how many times you do it, it is very compelling to see that. Why? Because it's a contradiction, right? And that's what Zack Snyder's films did very, very well, which is contradict what you thought was the standard, But yet people hated that. Anyways, the moment grounds us in the fact that Superman feels pain. One of the frequent complaints about Superman from non-comic reading general audiences and those who missed out on Superman the Animated Series and other various media adaptations is that he's overpowered and rarely faces hard physical challenges. This teaser nips that in the bud right away, showing that Superman is very much physically fallible. Not only do we see Superman physically beaten, but emotionally beaten as well. He walks through an angry crowd that throws bottles and cans at him as he's escorted into Stag Industries by the police, where he stands with a sense of the weight of the world on his shoulders. It's clear that Superman is not universally beloved, and as a reflection of contemporary America, we see him at his lowest. While there looks to be significant tonal departures from previous Superman films in both style and the comic book elements introduced, it's ironic that after a decade of complaints about a non-smiling Superman and his controversial perception on the global stage, these themes remain present in Gunn's take. This begs the question of whether these themes have become essential to establishing any contemporary film version of Superman. In 2006, Superman Returns tackled why the world doesn't need Superman. And in 2016, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice asked, must there be a Superman? The respective answers were that the world does need a Superman, and there is. What Gunn appears to be grappling with isn't the need for a Superman or the resigned acceptance that there is one, but the question of how do we make the world want a Superman? And this question not only applies to the world of the film, but to audiences as well. With all the superhero movies out there, what makes us want another Superman movie? It's very interesting, right? Superman Returns was still trying to sort of tackle a little bit, to a certain extent, people's sort of reluctance or sort of, indifference towards the character of Superman. But it's not only just Superman. What does Superman mean? Superman means doing the right thing. It means being good. It means not lying. It means having integrity. It means helping others, right? It means humility. It means responsibility. That's what the character of Superman means. And a lot of people who, say, oh, Superman's not relatable or whatever, the character of Superman is so incredibly amazing, and he's the greatest superhero of all time. And I think in many ways, he's the most relatable character, because Superman is an ideal. What's more relatable than something that you aspire to be? That to me is the most relatable thing. And I think that obviously that contradicts the definition of relatability, but you know what I mean? Like, who doesn't want to be better? Who wouldn't want to be better, right? That's a relatable concept. That's a universally relatable concept because everyone who's worth their salt, who's worth any salt, would want to be better, would want to strive to be better. And Superman is that beacon. He stands for that. Right? And the brilliance about it from a, superhero standpoint, from a mythical standpoint, is the fact that the guy is a god physically, but yet he is the most human amongst all of us. How can that be? The exploration of that is incredibly fascinating, and it's more fascinating than any other superhero's journey, period. Okay? And I think Superman Returns was tackling the world's sort of rejection of that to a certain extent, right? It was a little bit more edgy, a little bit more dark, and it showed Superman have a little bit of flaw here and there. He left the world to go and to go and search for Krypton, to be selfish, some people would say. And Lois Lane turns his back on him. The world, in a way, turns his back on him. And the movie kind of addresses that, and he comes back, of course, and then it becomes, Donner Superman again, basically. But it is still a little darker, even in its filmmaking, But then, and that movie didn't do well. And so then almost people's perception of Superman waned even worse, and I think it got even more distanced. Once you got to Man of Steel, it was like, okay, now we really got to make this guy relatable, right? However, I think Zack Snyder's take on Man of Steel was even though I think on paper it seems more relatable, like, the guy is a little bit more, I wouldn't say it's that he's flawed. I think it's that from the movie truly just treated him as a human being, like a journey of a dude becoming Superman. That's what the movie was. That's what people didn't really get from it. He still saved a shit ton of people. Like, people saying that Zack Snyder's Superman didn't have him saving people is ridiculous. He saved people from the very beginning, and he had a family that was trying to protect him, just like any other family would. That's relatable, right? Trying to keep him a secret, right? But Clark, he wanted to be good. Didn't matter to him. He always wanted to be good, and he always found a way to help people, in a human way. In a relatable way, like that one time where this guy was bothering this coworker that he was having, and then he like literally went and like put his fucking truck on this tree, as a karma, like thing, like it's like, and it's like that is that's a more edgy Superman, right? Some people would say Superman would never do that. And yeah, to a certain extent, no, I don't think he would, but it's also, why not? You know what I mean? Like, give him a little edge. Sure, why not, right? But, he still saves the world. He still saves a shit ton of people. He gives everyone in that movie hope. He gives Lois Lane hope. He finds inspiration in Lois Lane to be himself, and he inspires all the people around him on the Daily Planet to be better, everyone to be better in that movie. I mean, that's as Superman as you can possibly get. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know. But, people may, but I think that obviously on a filmic level, you can say that film is darker or edgier, right? Even more than Superman Returns, obviously way more than Donner Superman. And so again, we're moving towards that direction of making Superman, just trying to make him a little bit more sophisticated, right? Dark Knighting, Superman essentially. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think to a certain extent, it makes sense. It's we're trying to bring sophistication to a character who was often seen as a joke, who was often seen as a caricature, as a Boy Scout, trousers outside of his pants, the truth, justice, and the American way, saving cats out of trees. Like, that is sort of the thing. And James Gunn's Superman is trying to say, no, we're going to embrace all of that, And, to be fair, the synopsis that it was, that it does present, it's about a guy who represents kindness in a world that sees kindness as cheesy, or as that's not fashionable. It truly is the Boy Scout Superman movie, which I think is an interesting take. I mean, because we haven't seen that in decades, right? To that degree. But obviously, like this article states, we are still going to get some of that edginess, right? Which is a Superman that is dealing with a society that can be quite hostile towards him. And I also saw this one person saying, James Gunn's Superman is going to tackle the immigrant xenophobic, type of, motifs that the Superman character and his lore has. And I mean, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice did that, with Bruce Wayne hating on this alien, people hating on this alien. Again, Zack Snyder tackled all of that in a more sophisticated way, I think. And he tackled it head on with the destruction of the city in Man of Steel. People's response to that in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, Lex Luthor's character, philosophical hostility towards Superman, and he represented all the other half of the world who was questionable towards Superman, who asked the question, should we have a Superman? You know, should we allow a guy this powerful to roam around the world? It was a very realistic take. It was more science fiction than superhero-y. And I think that's fucking amazing. You know what I mean? Like, he tackled it head on. Maybe the deal was people didn't like how much Zack Snyder tackled it, the way that he tackled it. But I think he did it in a very sophisticated way. Now, the question is, we then turn to Superman, right? Which, like anything that's great, like anything that is supposed to be decent, you're supposed to get things from the past, get something from the present, and form it into something that is serviceable, that is approachable, that is great, and is sort of an amalgamation of everything great that came before it, right? And I think a lot of people have hope that James Gunn will do that. He will get the Donner Superman and combine a modern Superman and just, you know, that is the combination of the electric guitar and the John Williams theme, right? Modernity and, you know, nostalgia, right? And just kind of combine that and boom. Like, that we're supposed to get this modern yet incredibly relatable and incredibly Donner-like Superman experience, right? And a lot of people are looking forward to that, and I totally get it. And I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie because it's true. It's how I feel. If he nails it, it'll be something to see. That'll be really good. And I think this article here, you know, Superman Returns asked why the world doesn't need Superman. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice asked, must there be a Superman? I think this writer here is very, very, very smart in saying that the question that Superman has to deal with is, how do we make the world want Superman? And that is the question, truly, that Superman's James Gunn has to answer, and it has to answer it well. If it manages to include enough sophisticated narrative, enough edge, whilst also maintaining this warmth and the, you know, idealism and the hope that Superman represents, you know, and the fun, you know, I guess you could say, if you can manage to marry those two in a way that feels authentic, in a way that doesn't feel, you know, contrived, or it doesn't feel forced, but yet it doesn't feel overly dreary for some people, you know, then you're going to be in for something special. Despite the realities of a bruised and beaten Superman, there is also a desire for fantasy, for imagining the world as it could be. Now, more than ever, based on the glimpses we see in the trailer, Superman saving a little girl, and Superman's symbol being used as a flag in the fictional country of Baravia, which appeared in Superman number 2 in 1939, though it appears as the location has been changed from Europe to the Middle East, there is the suggestion that hope resides in younger generations. Well, that's what the movie's trying to do, right? Because I think the younger generation is the generation that's very, very hesitant towards, you know, embracing Superman as a character. You know, the younger generation, you know, as every young generation is, incredibly cynical, incredibly nihilistic to a certain extent. And, you know, I think Superman as a character, you know, in his peak and his perfection, I think is very, you know, very icky, you know. And so, yes, showing that Superman is relevant to places like the Middle East, which is, you know, because, you know, if you've been paying attention to the news, young people are, you know, very sympathetic to what happens, you know, to the events that happen across the world. And so, yeah, showing a Superman that is relatable in a place like that, especially in a young boy, you know, like you see in the trailer, this little boy saying Superman while holding the Superman flag, you know, very incredible, powerful imagery that I think can be very relatable to young people, which is really, you really need to get that. You know, you really need to get that. So that is definitely a good point. There is something compelling about a character who was created for an audience of children, appealing to children again, especially as Superman movies of the millennium have shifted toward older audiences. The tagline for Superman, "Look Up," encourages the same kind of wonder and childlike innocence as 78's "You'll Believe a Man Can Fly." You know, so I read this comment. It was, I can't recall the exact person who said it, but it was a YouTube comment. And someone said, look, Superman's the 1978 film came out during a time where there was a lot of cynicism and darkness in America, right? I mean, around that time, you had movies like The Warriors, right? Which is very gritty and very edgy and violent and just incredibly cynical take on the world, right? But it's also incredibly hopeful. But, nonetheless, still very gritty. And it was also set in New York. Taxi Driver, of course, I think came out the following year, the year before. And that one also incredibly edgy, incredibly gritty, gross, and, kind of almost degenerate, but also incredibly hopeful. And then you have Superman, which, does depict a New York that is very cynical or whatever, but definitely not to the degree that the other films do it. But you also have this red and blue wearing Boy Scout who is as bright as the goddamn sun, who's bringing hope to the city of New York, and also metaphorically to the cynicism of America around that time, to the depression of America in that time, culturally and economically and whatever, right? And I think that when you think of Superman 1978, just without the context, I think it's a fine film. I think it brings one of the best moments in Superman film history, of course. Very idealistic, very, cheesy and corny, but in all the good ways, but at the same time, I think it's, it's not incredibly modern. I think, there's a lot of, it's just kind of very, very surface level, not very sophisticated. But when you put it in the context of when it came out and the things that surrounded it, then it becomes really special. And that was something that I was failing to think about, right? And I think, the tagline for Superman 1978, "You'll believe a man can fly," and the time that it came out, it is truly that thing again, where it's like Superman is a character and it's a movie that is trying to bring some hope into the world that is incredibly cynical. Trying to show that kindness is not cheesy. It's the cool thing to do because it truly is the right thing to do. Superman is kindness in a world that thinks that kindness is outdated, right? And thus the Superman tagline now, "Look up," I think is very reminiscent of that. And I think when we think of Superman, this movie, the 2025 movie, in the time that it's coming out, I mean, it seems as though we're more divided now than ever, politically, culturally, socially. And so I think this movie, in many ways could not have come out at a better time. However, I think Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice came out in 2016, and that was a very, pivotal year in culture and in politics and everything, of course, and socially. And I think that movie was incredibly relevant for that time. So, but obviously people didn't really see that, which is a shame. But, if people see it with this movie, so be it. And, I think if Superman can continue being this character that gives us hope in a world that is incredibly cynical, negative, pessimistic, and that he inspires us to look up. And if James Gunn's Superman does that, that'll be really special. Gunn's Superman is also a world featuring a myriad of other wonders, as the teaser showcases. While the film feels packed with characters enough to create some trepidation on whether it can retain focus on Clark, they definitely give the film a distinct comic book flavor we haven't seen in previous Superman films. This is true. I think the best way... actually, let's keep going. The teaser shows quick glimpses of superheroes Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion, Hawkgirl, Isabella Merced, Mr. Terrific, Eddie Gathegi, and Metamorpho, Anthony Kerrigan. Our first look at the film's villains includes a brief glimpse of a mysterious black-clad behemoth in a face mask, and the ever-devious Lex Luthor, Nicholas Hoult, who appears to be brimming with emotion. I think that's unfortunately going to be the cringiest part of the movie, but... there's also a giant monster that may be connected to the giant purple and green orb in the sky, colors associated with the villains Superman fans have been waiting for decades to see on screen, Brainiac. Some people are saying that that villain is Solaris and not Brainiac, or maybe not Solaris, but maybe some other villain, but definitely not Brainiac. As exciting as those building blocks and perspective battles look to be, what felt most compelling about the trailer was Cornyn Sweat's Clark, whose depiction takes a page from Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's All-Star Superman, which saw Clark dressed in oversized clothes and defined by a slouched posture and messy hair. That is true. That's a good point. We see Clark share a tearful moment with his father, Jonathan Pruitt Taylor Vince, and have numerous interactions with Lois Lane, Rachel Brosnahan. Their chemistry is immediately apparent. I disagree, but again, it's a teaser trailer. I don't think we saw much, but I don't think the chemistry is incredibly apparent. We just see them embracing and then making out. I don't think that's very apparent. Obviously, we have yet to see a trailer. We have yet to see the goddamn movie. But yeah, I think when it comes to having all these characters in a Superman film, I at first was very, very annoyed. I was like, a lot of people gave Zack Snyder shit for including Wonder Woman and Batman in the Man of Steel sequel. And people were like, God, why are we rushing? And it's like, but yet James Gunn includes all these characters and it's fine. That being said, I think, when Zack Snyder did it, I think it was at the behest of the studio, not necessarily what he wanted to do. I'm sure he wanted to bring in Batman, but I don't know about Wonder Woman and Doomsday. But anyways, I know he wanted to build to a universe, but you know what I mean. But James Gunn doing it here, I know he's setting up the DC cinematic universe. I get it, But I think the defense that I later thought about was, look, think of Kingdom Come Superman, which obviously this movie is going to take some inspiration from, given the fact that it has a lot of fucking heroes, and the Superman crest is taken from Kingdom Come. That story was a story on, an older Superman who comes back to a world where superheroes obviously are already existing, but they're running amok, and Superman has to come back, not just to give people hope, but to show superheroes how to be superheroes. There's a lot of, shitty heroes and morally gray or morally evil superheroes. And Superman comes back and he gives hope to everyone, not just people, but superheroes. And that is incredible. And obviously that's an incredible story. And if James Gunn, if that's part of his story, because we know that there are some evil, I guess, or corporate superheroes here in James Gunn's Superman, possibly the Authority here, which is not a necessarily good group. So if Superman is going to give hope to everyone, going to show superheroes how to be superheroes, that's pretty incredible. And it's not something we've seen on the big screen. Now, some other people have also said, well, this is the first time we're going to get a Silver Age type Superman where fantasy and sci-fi are sort of the pinnacle of it. And corniness, as well, with this giant kaiju and, these incredibly colorful and kind of goofy characters. Come on, like Guy Gardner's Green Lantern. Dude, like Nathan Fillion looks like an idiot. And I think that's the point, right? But I don't know. You can make the argument as to whether it looks bad, or, so bad that it's good, that type of thing, or that it's the point. Hawkgirl looks whatever. Mr. Terrific is hilarious. The name of it is laughable. But that's fine. It's James Gunn. We saw it with Guardians of the Galaxy. He made a fucking movie with a character, called Polka Dot Man, and he made it an enjoyable movie. Not a masterpiece or anything, but it was enjoyable. Look, it depends just how it's pulled off. I think it can work. I think it's a very interesting way to tackle the Superman film and the first film in the DC cinematic universe. We'll see if it works. But if he tackles it, in the more Kingdom Come route, I think it can be very special. And here we have the last paragraph. For all the big ideas, questions, and hopes for the future that the teaser circles, the defining takeaway from our first look at James Gunn's Superman is that he's just a guy with a dog, managing 2 jobs and a romantic relationship, as he has good days and bad, some that leave him physically and emotionally beaten down, some that leave him tearful, and others that may count among the best days of his life. Why do we want a Superman? He's what we are and what we could be, the man of tomorrow, today. Brilliant way to end the article. Yeah, that's exactly what Superman is. I think as much as I may sound like a broken record, I mean, it pains me that, people did not see that in Zack Snyder's version of Superman, because that is what that was. The movie did tackle that idea of, you would literally had a character in the movie be like, what if Superman is just a guy trying to do the right thing? He's just a dude. And again, that's what makes Superman a compelling character. He's got the best powers in the world, but he's got the best heart, and because we know that absolute power corrupts absolutely. I think those films tackled it in a very sophisticated way. Those films had a lot of trials and tribulations for Clark and Superman and Batman and everyone. And it's about perseverance. It's about having hope. It's about, forming a bridge between each other. But, hey, like this article does state, those previous Superman films, sort of targeted a more adult, demographic, you can say. However, I wasn't an adult, but I wasn't a kid when I watched those films. And I still love them, those films made me think about them for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year. It wasn't just a movie that I went to go see, and have some popcorn and have fun and then just leave the theater and never think about it again. Because that's what James Gunn's films have been to me. That's what Marvel films are to me. It's just casual films that I watch and think about for a bit, and then that's it. But the Zack Snyder movies have stayed with me. They're so incredibly deep in their storytelling and their writing. And so, it does pain me that we're kind of, moving away towards that. But look, if it makes it more relatable to kids, to the whole family, it's going to be a 4-quadrant film. I hope it makes $1 billion. I hope it's really successful, and I hope it really resonates. And especially at the end of the day, I love Superman. He's my favorite superhero, and he's the greatest superhero, and he deserves the best. And I just really hope that this movie brings Superman back into the limelight where he deserves to be. I think that's what they want to do. I mean, they're starting with Superman, they're not starting this DC universe with Batman. You can't do that. You start with Superman. He's at the top of the pyramid, right? But there we have it, everyone. Those are my thoughts on this article here. Does the world still want Superman? Written by Richard Newby. Please let me know in the comment section below what you think of this article. Did you enjoy my commentary as well? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comment section. I would love to have a respectful and engaging debate with you. Do not comment if you have not watched the whole video. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much. Give this video a like if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more stuff like this. Make sure to follow me on the social medias and everything. The links are down below. Share this video with your Superman-loving friend if you will. If it's your birthday, happy birthday to you, you beautiful creature. But I think that's it for me. You all take care, stay safe, and until next time, I love you.